Okay, I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, second speaker for the first meeting of the year. It's Ronald Olson, and we really need to be appreciative of him because he was originally scheduled to talk in May, but we had a last minute cancellation, and so he agreed to move his presentation up. Now we need to fill a May slot, but we'll worry about that later. At least we got today's specialty covered. So, Ron Olson, he directed and oversaw the Michigan State Park system that consists of 104 diverse state parks and recreation areas, 140 state forest campgrounds, and over 300,000 acres of land. The system hosts nearly 35 million visitors annually, including 5 million on Belle Isle Park. I think we're going to have a trip coming up on Belle Isle, I thought I heard. Olson also served as superintendent of the City of Ann Arbor Parks and Recreation Department and other jurisdictions in Maryland, Indiana, and Minnesota. He's active in the National Recreation and Park Association, the National Association of State Park Directors, and he's a member of the American Academy of Park and Recreation Professionals. He has served as president of the Michigan Recreation and Park Association and is past president and a founding member of the MRPA. Olson served on the Board of Regents and was an instructor for the National Parks and Recreation Supervisory Management School, served on the National Association of State Park Directors as a regent, and was an instructor for the State Park Leadership School. He has presented numerous educational sessions at the MRPA National Conference, Michigan, and other states, Parks Recreation Association conferences, and training institutes. Olson has received many awards and recognitions, including the Professional of the Year recognition by the NASPD, as well as the Fellowship Award from the MRPA. Welcome to Ron.
All right. Thank you. Well, there you go. How about that? Now the expectations are real high. So first of all, I'd like you to all close your eyes, all right? And I'd like you to think about a time in your life that meant the most to you in an outdoor recreational experience, something that you flash back to. It could be when you were a kid or last week or whatever. All right? You can open your eyes now. All right. How many of you have been to and we'll come back to that in a second. How many of you have been to a state park in Michigan? All right, great. So you have that. One of the things I always start out with is why we do what we do. Anybody ever looked at the Simon Sink TED Talk on the why? You ever look at that? Oh, well, there you go. Well, then I won't be repeating myself. Well, basically his theory in the TED Talk, and you probably are aware of that, where you have people talk about their philosophy and things like that, is why we do what we do. We all can explain what we do and how we do it real well. But if I asked some of you in your past jobs to come up here and say, well, why did you do what you do? You'd probably end up reverting back to talking about what you did and why and how. But really, getting back to your memory, one of the goals that we have and the why we do what we do in the state park and recreation system is to create lifelong memories. And you can't do that by having, bad facilities or not very iconic places to go or things like that. The lands have to be stewarded. The things have to be one of the things we know is clean, safe parks is a very big deal, as you very well know, clean bathrooms and the like, and having relevant recreational opportunities to go for things that everybody can have access to. Access for everybody. And so that's a tall order when you have a population that goes from, like the woman just said, 18-month-olds and 93-year-olds and above and below. So anyway, and I just wanted to start out with that. So those of you that I'm sure was there anybody that couldn't remember a memorable moment in your history in the outdoors? If you do, you have to leave the room. So anyway, no. So right away it rivets on your first fish you caught, or the hike you took, or grandfather or grandmother, your father or mother, or somebody took you out and then experienced something that you remembered. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through a little bit more about how this whole thing is assembled to create the outcome of all the state parks. And we also manage a number of other things, as you'll see. The outline, I'm going to go over some of the budget stuff, and I know some of it might be boring to you, but just to give you a kind of an example of the DNR budget in total, of which the Parks and Rec division is the biggest division in that. The other divisions are like wildlife, fisheries, and forestry, and law enforcement division. So just to kind of remind you of that. And then an overview of what the division does, public engagement, partnerships, and then some critical infrastructure and some other things. The mission is clear, basically, to take care of natural features, unique resources, and cultural resources, water-based public recreation and education. But like I said, simply put, is the fact that we're in the lifelong memory business. But state parks is big boon for the economics of tourism, and you can see the $53 billion that the tourism industry and the boating industry. And to give a couple of examples, the Tart Trail up in Traverse City, which is our trail, but we manage it in partnership with the Tart group out of Traverse City. And people that go on those trails spend non-motorized trails spend about $4,900 annually to support that, whether it's bicycles or horses or others, and that varies from person to person. And people buy meals and different things like that. On the Michigan State University, your favorite university up the block here, that the average spending for a person going to camping or day use is $198 a day, and that equates to over $250 million of, based on the number of users that we have and the camp nights that we have, the 1.3. So it contributes to the economy. This is the DNR source. Most of it, if you can see that, but really those little squares are a lot of fees and basic things. But the one that you look at, the general tax money, is only 14%. So people think, well, everything's funded by tax funds, and that's not true. And so a lot of it, steward of lands, conservation, whether you like hunting and fishing and all that, that's where a lot of the money comes from, to steward wildlife lands and a lot of the forest lands. Although the timber industry that goes on, that does maintain some of the 4 million acres of that. This is the state park, the DNR expenditures, and you can see the law, the forest, and Parks and Rec and wildlife, and how that splits out. And you can see what we do in Parks and Recreation is the biggest chunk of how the money is appropriated out of the budget. The state park operating budget, you can see, is made up of a number of revenue sources, and the general tax funds, it says 7%, but part of that is a brand new program that started last year called Nature Awaits, where the goal was to have every fourth grader in the state of Michigan have experience in the state park. We provided grants, transportation, and leadership, and that's been going on. But reality is that only 3% of the entire state park budget comes from tax funds. Everything else is revenue earned. This gives you a breakout of the passport, and you can see camping is still the biggest chunk of money. And the unfortunate part of that is, the good news is we get a lot of campers and we have high occupancy rate. The challenge is the fact that camping fees are helping to pay for day users. And so there's some imbalance there. But even though rec passport. How many of you have a rec passport sticker on your car? And that's a great investment, and we appreciate that because that's a very important part of it. And it's a cheap investment. I was there when we created all that back in 2010, and it really revolutionized the revenue by tying it to a license plate registration. But you can see that a lot of this is we have to earn our keep. It's a huge operation and a business piece. This is the growth of the passport. You can see where we started and where we are now. It wobbles around a little bit, but we knew that it would level off. After COVID, it boomeranged up, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we learned in COVID that the value of outdoor spaces became very evident. You know, some of you were cooped up in your house and said, I want to get out. Where did you go? You went to parks or open areas where not a lot of people were. Well, where is that? Well, you needed big spaces, and we provided that, and we stayed open during that because we were declared an essential service, and it was a little bumpy ride with staff and that, but we made it through. And I think after that, the usership boomeranged up, as we'll talk about in a little bit later. The capital part of the program, we have state parks and boating, and then we have trails and the state forest recreation, as was mentioned earlier, the 150 some campgrounds in the state forest. These are rustic campgrounds, and I like to consider them, you know, the continuum. We have dispersed camping, which means you can go out and get a permit and you can go out and camp wherever you want in the forest as long as you comply by certain rules. And then it goes to the rustic camping, and then we go to semi-modern, modern, and then we have cabins and yurts, and we now introduce tiny houses, and we now have upper scale lodging that we'll talk about in a little bit. So we have really the goal when I started there was to provide, and I mentioned that, having relevant pursuits and relevant things to people with young families. Don't want to go out and lay on the ground and get wet, and the kids have trouble, and so cabins are a big deal. Then people graduate into tent camping, and then they get a camper usually, and then they go from there, and then eventually into I want to be outside, but I don't have to put up with all the crap that you have to do with tents and that. Even though that's a lot of fun, it can be a lot of work, and then you just want to get out and enjoy yourself. So the cabins and those other options are something that we felt we needed to provide. As was mentioned earlier, we have 103 currently state parks, and the 104th we're building right now in downtown Flint, right? Downtown, we leased 5 city parks and got those situated, and we got some land donated and some other things, and we'll have a 230-acre park along the Flint River. And we're spending, in a little while we'll talk about that, but we have a $30 million appropriation from the AAPRA funds, the American Recovery Act funds, and then we've supplemented that with grants, and we'll be spending about $50 million to develop a pretty cool park, and it'll have the only mountain bike trails in the city limits of Flint. How about that, huh? As an example, but inaccessible to the river. Some of you might have seen it with the big cement walls and all that junk where the river went through. Well, we are tearing down some of that and making access to the water. We took out old dams and riffles and opened up 25 miles of fish passage, and that it'll be a nice spot when we're all finished. We have the 19 harbors that we own. Are any boaters in here that travel around the Great Lakes or ever did that in the past? Some have. Well, those harbors are every 30 miles, and they're spaced out on purpose, and it's called Harbors of Refuge. And so we are in charge of that. It got named back in the 40s in cooperation with the Coast Guard to provide safe havens for boaters around the Great Lakes. And we maintain 19 of them, and there's 60 some that are maintained by local communities like Lexington Harbor or Ludington or St. Joe, and all those are our partners, and they're municipal public marinas, and we provide grant funds to help them fix up their place and that kind of stuff. We have 13,700 miles of trails. We also manage all the ORV, snowmobile, and non-motorized trails scattered around. Anybody ride ORVs and around on? Oh, we have a sheepish hand go up there. But snowmobile riders, some of you may have done that in the past, and that's been a kind of a declining activity. ORVs are on the up climb, and snowmobile on the downside because of climate change and the like. But that's a big deal. And then non-motorized trails, we manage like the White Pine Trail is 100 mile, just about 100 miles. It goes from Grand Rapids to Cadillac. We just finished paving the rest of that just recently, and we have lots of partners. And we have the Hart Montague Trail and the Van Buren Trail, and there's actually 5 state parks that are designated as large trails. As we mentioned, we have over 300,000 acres of land to care and maintain that assemble a state park system, but that doesn't include the trail mile or acreage, I should say. So we hosted, as was mentioned, 38 million. That's an increase of 43% from 2019, and that occurred mostly because of COVID. In 2021, we had a record year of camping, all-time record in the history of the park system. We had 1.4 million camp nights. A camp night is every night you camp is a camp night, and that pretty easy to figure that out because you're academics from the University of Michigan. I would expect that you know all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, we had that record, and we had over 42,000 harbor nights in our harbors. That's a 61% increase. So people got out and went outdoors. If you recall, during the COVID time, you couldn't buy a bicycle. All bicycles were sold out. Boats, you couldn't buy a boat. Everybody bought a boat because they wanted to get out, and that just shows you the power of the outdoors when people and the value of that. ORV license, I mentioned. 308,000. Some of these stats I just want to give you because some of you might like stats, but it gives you perspective is all it does. It increased of 24%. Snowmobile increased, ORV permits, I should say, which is a license and a permit. A trail permit is you have to have that in order to ride on the trail. The others you have to have if you have an ORV. Snowmobiles is increased some, but snowmobiling has gone up and down with climate change, with the amount of climate. It's hard to ride a snowmobile down here anymore because the snow is so erratic. And even parts up north, there's some that we supply. We support 80 some or probably 50 some snowmobile clubs through grants, and some of them hardly ever groom anymore and things like that. So it's climate change is real. So we also have special places like the Outdoor Adventure Center. Anybody ever been there in downtown Detroit on Atwater Street? We took an old abandoned building called the Globe Building and resurrected it. And one thing in my career that I thought was cool, when I first started, I started in February, and in April, I introduced Governor Granholm and Stephen Chester, the DEQ director. And we stood out at Milliken State Park, and we saw the remnant of the cement plants that existed to the west of where the Milliken is, the dry dock there. And the next day they started demolishing the rest of the cement plant. And today it's about a 30-acre park that has a demonstration wetland, native plants, and that's all part of the riverfront, 5-mile Detroit riverfront that goes through there. Now, if somebody knows this, I'll give you $100, but you would never know. You'd lie to me probably for that much, but I'll give you $10 if you could tell me, but I won't get into that too far. But the West Riverfront, the Ralph C. Wilson Park, the brand new $50 million, now it's up to like $70 million. You know who owns that land is we do. I was involved in buying that property, and we bought it from the Riverfront Conservancy, who had bought it from the Detroit Free Press, and then we leased it back to them because we figured that they could generate the money and build it, and it's all part of that network. And also we bought $15 million worth of easements along the Detroit River was not owned by the city of Detroit. And so now that entire riverfront, if they ever go out of business, is locked down in public ownership. Either the city of Detroit or we own it. So that was scheme that, not a scheme, but it was something we felt we needed to do. And because, nonprofits are nonprofits and sometimes things don't last forever. And as you saw 2 years ago, this guy I knew real well, their finance guy, absconded with $40 million. And it was really devastating. So you can see that even a nonprofit are vulnerable to things like that. We also run the Ralph McMullen Conference Center. Anybody ever been there? It's up on Higgins Lake. We rent that out for nonprofits. Maybe your group would want to go there for a retreat or something. There's lodging up there, and it's a pretty cool. It's like going back to camp. It's a little souped up version, and there's meal service, and it's right on Higgins Lake. And we cater mostly to nonprofit partners and environmental groups. And then the Porcupine Mountains. Anybody ever been there? Anybody ever downhill skied there? Well, that we do have a downhill ski area. It's a 65,000 acre park and got all kinds of, it's a wilderness designation by the feds. It's a cool place. Staffing, we have 700 or so career positions. We hire 1,300 non-career, basically summer employees to manage the system. We also steward the lands. We do prescribed burns. In 24, we did 23 state parks in varying degrees to maintain ecological integrity. Hemlock woolly adelgia is something that's emerging along with other invasives, and we've treated 7,500 acres. We've done a lot of work on that, identifying that, and then to manage it. To give an example, at PJ Hoffmeister, we had to remove probably, 50 or 70 specimen oak trees. And then we use a vibrator plow to cut the roots so it doesn't spread. And on Belle Isle, we took out over 100 oak trees because of that disease. And we've done work on that too. And we replanted that. In a little while, I'll show you how we did that. Accessibility for all. We have a number of demonstrations. Some years ago, I was able to get a grant from Kresge, and we have 8 exemplary access points. Good example of that is at Rifle River Recreation Area. Anybody ever been there? Nice spot. Everybody ever kayak there? And you use a kayak launch? Well, that kayak launch was designed out of this grant, and it was a prototype for Easy Dock. And today, the one that they manufactured was the design features from that were created out of this grant that we had. So today, that the access is much better designed. And then on the lower left is the track chairs. We have the most track chairs of any park system in the United States. We have about 20 of them, and they're all funded by nonprofits. And it provides access for people in the backcountry that don't have the mobility to get out and walk or move around in the backcountry. And you can check them out. You don't have to pay for it. And there's a list of parks where those are available. So any of you that like to go out but don't feel comfortable doing that, you should check that out. And Mayberry State Park, for example, has one, and you can go trekking. We're also into green energy. We've done a lot of stuff. We have green vehicles. We have electric EV trucks. We've now migrated into EV lawnmowers, hand mowers, and chainsaws and small equipment. We have charging stations at many parks now. We did a partnership with Rivian, and they funded it for 10 years at a number of parks. And the solar energy that we put in, we've also put in solar panels and things that's cut our electric use at those locations 50%. And then we have 52 EV charging stations, and we've converted about 75% of our equipment, small equipment, over to electric use. Now, results matter. We keep track of every visit that somebody has. And last year, our camping people said 97% of the people that camped with us or lodged with us said they would recommend it to a friend. That's pretty good in any kind of customer service business. The harbors, 93% said they would do it. Now, we don't manage every harbor, but they're our partners and they are on our reservation system. And so we're, that really is our bellwether. Public engagement, we have tons of friends group. Anybody ever been a camp host? Well, if you like to camp and you want to go out and spend 3 weeks or a month at a state park and not have to pay anything, and you can be there and answer questions and spew your great knowledge of the outdoors or whatever, or offer, kids, crafts or whatever the case might be. We have a lot of friends or hosts that come and go, and that's a cool deal to do if anybody's interested. And then we have 55 active friends groups around. So we have active groups that raise money and help spread the word, but they also help us with a lot of different things at the parks all the time. Then we have a plethora of advisory groups. So if anybody's interested in any of those activities, we have the Michigan State Park Advisory Committee overall, a number of trail groups, equine, the non-motorized, the off-road, snowmobile, and then Belle Isle Advisory Committee, and then the Michigan State Waterways Commission. And oftentimes we'll have subgroups that work on different things. We also have partners. We started down the road. We've had Blue Cross Blue Shield has sponsored many things. North Face company did a free giveaway of passports some years ago, and we have the Tourism Cares. Anybody ever heard of that? Well, that's where the tourism industry will provide. They come and do volunteers, people that manage hotels, motels, and all that. And they like our state parks because most of them, the tourists that come, they'll go to a state park when they go to visit places if they don't choose to stay in a state park. And they'll do volunteer projects with us. And they just finished one at Tawas State Park. Anybody ever been in the lighthouse at Tawas State Park? Well, they just painted the foundation, cleaned the whole area up. We had 150 volunteers last weekend. And did you know, another trivia question, this is something you can make some money on. Can you tell me the only lighthouse in probably the United States that has a geothermal heating system in it? No, the Tawas Lighthouse does. We put that in as a demonstration because we do have people, if you like that kind of stuff, you can rent that and volunteer and stay in the quarters that the Coast Guard had, and you can stay in there, and then you can interpret. There's period furniture and stuff like that in the rooms where you can interpret what it was like when people lived and worked there and ran the lighthouse over the years. And it's pretty cool. And we have the Lighthouse Keepers, which is a nonprofit that partner with us. And then we've had Geico Insurance and all of that over time. We also had our own beer label with the Lake and Trail and the Holland Brewing Company. And we got to cut out every can of beer that was sold. Some thought, we can't do that. And we said, well, people do go to parks and they drink beer. And if they want to do that, we have our own wine label from a winery in Traverse City. And we've done a number of things like that to partner with groups, and all those funds go into our revenue pot. This is the one I was talking about when we replanted trees. One of my staff came up with this Happy Little Trees. Anybody ever signed up for the Happy Little Trees 5K walk or event? Well, this started out of the COVID time, and there was a lot of virtual events where you could sign up and the money would go towards tree planting. And at that time, the invasives were rising and things like that. And we did have a partnership with the prisons where they would grow native plants. We'd collect seeds with volunteers, give them the seeds, and then the prisoners would learn horticulture and grow the tree or grow the plants till they got enough where you could replant them. And then we would get the plants, and then volunteers would put them in. So we had a constant supply of native plants through that program. And anyway, well, in order for us to bolster that, our staff member came up with Bob Ross. Anybody heard of him? The dude that does the painting. Well, he's become an icon, and she went to the Bob Ross Foundation, and they thought it was a cool idea, so we hatched the Happy Little Trees 5K walk or run, bike, or whatever you wanted to do. And the first year since 2019, we've had 77,000 participants. The first year we had like 20,000 people signed up. We had people from all over the United States and some foreign countries. And along with that, and then people got a number, they got a medal, and then in April, the goal was to go out and on a third weekend in April the theory was to go to a state park and go walk or run or bike or whatever you do and engage in that. And since that time, it's really gone well. We've unearned about $939,000 of revenue, almost $1 million, and that's all gone in. That goes right back into the plants and trees, more than the prison grove, but to replant the oaks that were met their demise with the oak wilt and some other diseases. National Guard, we partner with them, the 107th Engineering Battalion, and so far they've helped us offset $1.8 million. They come in and they do work that teaches them how to build bridges and roadways and stuff that they would use as military training. So they bring their equipment in and then they do that. We buy the materials for whatever it is, and they've done some really nice renovation of things. They've done roadways, boat launches, and they worked at reshoring the Porcupine Mountains along Lake Superior during the high water when the shoreline got all messed up and the highway almost got washed out, and they reballasted the road with huge boulders and stuff. And so it's a really cool partnership. I mentioned the lodging. So these are some of the things we did. We reimagined our lodging, and we also partnered with Explore US, which is a private company. What they did is they invested so far $1.8 million, and then they create like safari tents and cabins and things like that are a little upscale that people want higher end lodging, and people are willing to pay. We get 10%. They invested everything and they maintain the facilities. We just allow them to use it for so many years on our park, and after the term of the lease, we can keep the facility or have them take it out. We have a geodesic dome at Port Crescent, and those things are booked the whole entire season. And so it's worked out really well. We have a number of cabins at Sterling State Park now and a number of other places. I mentioned the American Rescue Plan that when COVID happened, and we've had a list of $300 million worth of backlogged infrastructure. These are sewers systems, these are roads, these are water supply systems, these are electric systems, these are outdated things, and not the glitz and glamour you might see, but a lot of below ground stuff and whatnot. And I've been working on that since 2005, and it took the COVID thing to get over the top, and the governor liked our plan. And when that came about, they were looking for infrastructure, and she went to bat for $250 million, and subsequently became $273. And we got that approved through the legislature, and so we've been working on that for the last 2 to 3 years, and we have to finish up by the end of the year. And a number of parks closed and things, but you can see the $219 million in the state park system, $30 million that went into the park I mentioned in Flint, and then $23 million we pitched to rebuild things on Belle Isle. We spent $14 million renovating the conservatory. Anybody ever been there? Belle Isle? Well, if you haven't been there in a while, it's all renovated. We redid the girders, replaced the glass. We had glass falling out, and it was pretty bad shape. And then we just are in the process. The fountain's closed right now, but we're renovating that with $6 million to modernize that because we had cracks in the basin and it was leaking water through, and we're modernizing the pumps that have been there since 1919. And here's a little factoid for you. When that fountain was built, which the gentleman that donated $5 million. A lot of people didn't like him, and if you notice when you're there, they put his statue on the east side of the fountain, and guess the prevailing winds come from the west, and guess what happens when the water splashes? It splashes him in the face, and that was not done by accident. Also, you know the top of the fountain when it's running full blast, which we have never turned it on full because we were worried the pumps would fly apart. But that was designed so that you could see the top of the spray from the intersection of Jefferson and Woodward. So if you stood there, and it was designed so you could see the top of that spray. So that's something you didn't know. See, even the University of Michigan crowd didn't know that. So anyway, so that's a little factoid. But so anyway, that's under construction right now. We spent $4 million on the casino building, which is a social hall, removed asbestos, redid the roof, and that's reopened now. And then the Flynn Pavilion, we rebuilt that, and number of other. We're working on the famous boathouse situation down there, and that's a tough one. And we're working with a third party, and we're hoping that that all pans out so that that can get renovated and we can have a long-term sustainable plan to keep that going, because it's about a $50 million renovation, and we couldn't, there's no way we could have done that. So we'll see where that takes us on that front. And then a lot of things that we did, roads and sewers and camp electric and all that kind of stuff. This just shows you some things. We still have a number of projects left to go, whether it's trails, waterways, or state parks. So we're not done yet, but that just shows you a couple of examples. Here's some other ones that you got sewer problems and different things like that. That one in the middle top is Holly Rec area. Anybody ever been there? That's the sewer system, and we found that the old system we had was still working, but you know the chemicals that are in an ORV, what was happening is that that thing was so old it wouldn't process the chemicals, and so it was allowing the chemicals to go into the waterway. So we had to shut it down, and we had to use a pumper, and now we built a $3.5 million system. It's state of the art there, and so that's no longer a problem. And then the electric, most of our campgrounds were 30 amp, and most RVs now draw 50 plus amps, and so we had to rebuild that because it would blow out. Hot days it would blow out the circuits, and sometimes we had to put fans on and put tents over the breakers so they wouldn't blow. There was a couple times we had to station staff at night on a hot night to keep turning the switch on because it would kick off. People didn't know that, but that's the kind of stuff that we had to deal with. But a lot of that's being fixed now. Now, this is a little contest. Who can tell me what this one is? Where this is? What? Come on. I gave you a clue earlier. What does that look like? Looks like an indoor place where. Okay, there you go. Got it. Come on, you got a lottery ticket here. You can make $1 million. All right. It's the Outdoor Adventure Center in Detroit. That guy, he's been around. There you go. You make $1 million now. Okay. All right. Now, on the left one, where is that one? It's a beach, big lake. Nope. 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 A state park, remember. Grand Haven. Did you guess that? All right, here you go. You could win up to $500,000. You may never come back. All right. Does anybody can tell me on the right-hand side where that is? Nope. What? Mm-hmm. It's a relatively new ORV park in Oakland County, near Holly Rec area. All right, nobody got that one. It's the Holly Oaks. What? Did you get it? Oh, all right, we'll give it to you. Here you go. You can come and get this after a while. All right. Boy, we have to stretch this stuff. All right, upper left. Nope. Lake of the Clouds. Who said that? Here you go. Did you say it first? Here you go. Come on. I know you can. You came up here before, so I didn't want to. How about the one on the right? All right. You all said that, so. Geez, I don't know how we can deal with that one. Everybody knows that one, but I heard him say it first, so you can have this. He was just there. Did you go to the bridge, the new bridge? What does a plaque say on the bridge? What does a plaque say on the bridge? Plaque. I'm not giving you this. You didn't look. It's named after me, but my name is on there. I'm not giving you this. So next time you go there, you have to look for that, because I don't know. I just joke with you, but if you really want this, I'll give it to you. Anyway, okay, let's see. All right, on the left. There you go. You got it. All right. Kippity-Kitchi, that's the big spring up on the UP. That's where you take the raft across. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. On the right, anybody can get that? That's a tough one. What? Nope. You'll never get it. No, I don't think. Nope. It's Silver Lake State Park. It's looking back on the ORV area. If you look really close in the back, you can see there's a little blip on the top of there, but that's a tough one unless you were in a boat and had looked back. So we'll just let that one go. But that just shows you the beauty from a lot of perspectives. How about on the left? Nope. It's in the UP. That's all I'm going to tell you. Which one? Nope. No, you're in the general territory, but not that one. Bond Falls. Is that what you said? Yeah, there you go. All right. There you go. You didn't think you'd be rich today, did you? All right. The last one is on the right-hand side. Oh, y'all won. Well, we'll give you all that. So, yeah, that's one. I understand you have a trip coming, or you did go to one. All right. Well, oops. If you need any special help, let me know, and I'll make sure you get somebody out there can give you a more deep dive and tour if you want to give you, because I mean, I don't know when you're going. I mean, I've given tons of tours out there, but there's a lot to be learned. But if you're going out there on your own, just looking, it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff to learn, not only about improvements, but also certain things that are there and so forth. But anyway, that's all I got. I got 45 minutes on the dot, because I know he would get on my ass if I didn't do it right. So now I got, and then we got, somebody won back there. Here you go. You can get it when you can. So anyway, I don't know if anybody had any questions, right?
Okay, got one here. Make sure you raise your hand.
Couple quick questions. For camping fees in the state parks, do you charge the same for Michigan residents and non-residents?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
We do.
We
And
camped a lot in state parks across the country.
you know, here's a little stat. If somebody said, that's not fair. Well, did you know 82% of the campgrounds are booked by Michigan residents? So, and some people think, oh, I try to get into Ludington and those damn non-residents get in there before I do. That's the probability of that is very small. So
We heard some unpleasant stuff crossing the country in various states. So I'm just glad that we don't have those bad ideas.
One reason is we're in the tourism business, and we've had legislators come and say, oh, I got a constituent. We say, yeah, but 82% are residents, and last I knew, tourism was our second best industry. So,
Quick question, another one. Do most of the state parks that offer camping and hookups, do they keep the hookups all winter, or at least part of the winter?
we have some parks that are open in the winter, but a lot of them are not. So there's
And the
a
ones
list.
that are open, do they have hookups?
Some of them do, yeah. Now at Wilderness State Park, we have full hookups that we didn't have before, but you have to look online and check that out. But there's a few. Yeah. Yep.
I've been to I've been to state parks in Ohio, Indiana, and they have a system where they have lodges in their state parks and modern cabins. And I've been in Ohio to several of them, but Michigan's got much better scenery up here. There are a lot of things that are not that exciting in Ohio. And I'm always curious why Michigan didn't go that same route to have at least few of the things where you could have lodges where you could have multi-generational or people who are, as they're getting older and have disabilities and so forth.
Well,
because you talk about camping a lot.
yeah, that's a good question. It's come up before, and the reason basically is that as you know, because we have great destinations, the private sector has created motels and hotels and stuff like that surrounding them. And in those other states like Nebraska, Kansas, in Indiana, and even Ohio, a lot of them, the state invested in them to create tourist destinations, and they used the lodges as a carrot, but the landscape weren't that great. I've been to a number of them, and even though some of them are pretty nice, like Pokagon State Park in Indiana, but that's what they did, and so they invested. Here, when I got here, we were faced that question because everybody thought we'd make millions doing that, and we did a study, and you don't make millions doing that, and you have to bond and buy those, and then a private operator runs them, and then the state gets some money back, but it's basically breaks even. So it basically the model has been we're in the camping business and the kind of the medium range lodging, and then the model of the private sector doing their thing. That's the way it was built. Wherein, like I said, if you go to like I said, Nebraska, they'll tell you they created tourist destinations around reservoirs and stuff in these open areas, and then they put lodges in, and people will go because the lodge is there. But I understand the benefit. Right. No, I understand the Oh yeah, right. No, you're not wrong, but I'm just telling you that's the reason. Yeah. Oh,
Trying them at the little houses you talked about, So, talking about the reservation system, do you got any tips or tricks on how to go about securing them? It's very hard. Our whole family sets up and we're waiting 6 months ahead of time, and we're like, got any tips?
Well, we used to have, you can call the call center or you can do it online. And a lot of people say, well, I'll try the call center. We've had people that have bought speed dial phones. And I had a woman one time told me, I'm trying to get into Holland State Park. And she went around the garage sales. That's before cell phones were really prolific. And she would take a stopwatch and time how quick the redial would go, and so on. But I think going online is probably the best way to do it, and you just be ready to go and when time comes. But the volume is big, and what I always tell people is that you try for that and then have your second choice available right away. And if you can't get that, try to get your second choice, because if you wait too long, then the second choice might be priority two. So there, and some people think it's a, kind of some kind of fix-up deal and all that, but it's not. Back in the day before the reservations, when I came here, we had just started run down that road, and they still had some remnants. And what would happen is people would camp at like Ludington, and then they'd book their next year right then and there. And so you could book a year in advance. And so a lot of those sites, they were like people had lifelong sites, and it wasn't fair. And so we created the 15-day rule, and then to create turnover, to create fairness. So yeah, it's a very, very good question that comes up. But to be honest with you, we find a lot of times people aren't prepared. They don't have their you got to, of course, register your stuff and get ready. But then if you try not to make mistakes when you're doing this thing, is because we have a lot of times our staff will get somebody who's really upset, and then they find out that they forgot to do some piece or puzzle or whatever. But so, yeah. Yeah. Well, you and a bunch of others in January. You know what? January, our website is more popular in the month of January than the state lottery. So there you go. But good question. But our thing is, what I was trying to do is create more supply. And if we had more campsites, then it would set. But then certain parks, if we did that, we'd ruin the experience by having too much. So, yeah.
You mentioned briefly up in Tawas at the lighthouse.
Yeah.
The lighthouse keeper program. Is that something you oversee, or you work in collaboration? Because we do go up to that area, and that looks like a really cool experience for people.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, one, if you guys oversee it, and where other places in the state of Michigan that opportunity is available.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lighthouse Keepers is a partnership that we have with them. We don't control them, but we're in partnership because we got the student honor of owning the lighthouse, but then they have an agreement with us to do, things that they do. And Alilo State Park has a really nice one there, and there's headquarters, or there's historic stuff in there too, as an example. We do have some other ones that aren't quite the same, as where you have lodging inside and people stay there and then volunteer to interpret the area. But that's basically how it works. But if you're interested in that, just look them up, or the park, and it'll tell you what you need to know. Or if you get lost, just call the park and they'll tell you what to do. So don't be afraid to call. Use the old pick up the phone, because it's hard to answer everybody's question.
Any other questions?
Oh, shit. The picture of what? Oh, the luge run. That's Muskegon State Park. It's a winter sport park. It's one of 3 luges in the United States that exists. We also have a wheeled route that we helped them put in, but it's run by the Muskegon Winter Sport Park Association, and it's embedded in there. We have a long-term agreement. They have zip lines and ice skating and cross-country skiing and all of that kind of stuff there. But yeah, that luge run is cool. And if you've ever done it, you can go during the summer and ride on the wheeled route, and it's fully accessible. It's the only accessible luge run as far as I know, in the United States, where you can have access to it. If you like that kind of stuff, to fly down the hill in a couple seconds. But it's a cool deal. Yeah.
Okay. Any other hands?
There we go. There we go.
Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Good way to start the program here.